the Indian Express papers, Chandigarh edition. As always, the topics that we are covering are mentioned over here. Now, from today's newspaper, one particular news was about invasive species. So, plant has been referred to, and here we can build on the invasive species. So, morning I shared with you an article on the Telegram. So, this you can study and prepare a note of invasive species, some examples and concerns associated with it. In 2018 of mains, there was a question asked with reference to the phenomena of allelopathy. So this is again concerned with the invasive species. Okay, so this one. Then we get to know about farmer issues, which is important from GS3 point of view. So one is telling us about the issues farmers faced at the mandi level, at the market level. And the other is with reference to the damage the plants had in this monsoon cycle. So insurance related issues, the compensation from insurance companies are not coming. So these two topics are again independently, they are very, very important. Then in the editorial opinion section, there is this article which is important, that is G22 UN. From here, basically, it is focusing on India's new stance, new approach to foreign policy. So this I have summed up and have added some more pointers. Then employment puzzle. So this is also very, very important. It's concerning the demographic dividend and how we are going to witness aging population in times to come. So all these facts, what needs to be done, so that I have added over here. On Asian's plate is about the recent ASEAN summit, Asian countries' priorities. So that again important as part of India's extended neighborhood policy. Then we have the eco section, not explained section again, code of conduct for MP. So this was mentioned today. Now here the important topic from mains point of view is the need for codification of parliamentary privileges. So I could think of only that topic from the mains point of view. Again, that will be GS2. I'm not covering that aspect. I'll just cover what is mentioned today. Some other time we will do that codification of parliamentary privileges. Okay. Before starting with today's news analysis, I would briefly like to tell you about my mentorship course, which is at 6,000 rupees. The timetable is like this. Right, timetable. I'll give you the timetable besides daily answer writing practice on current affairs, as well as static topics, recorded content on static topics, any test series that you are doing. So discussion on that for both prelims as well as mains, and doubts anytime in the evening slot, 7 to 10 p.m. Anytime you can reach out. Now coming to the world news. The paper starts with the international section. The US federal government shut down NEAs. Why the shutdown? Because in the US, like in India also, the legislature has to, has to pass the budget so that the funds are available for the government to run. So if the fund is not allocated, then how will the government function? So that is the problem. So Congress has 4 days to fund the government. If in that the Congress does not agree, then in that case, there will be a shutdown. Okay. Now the US Congress comprises of 2 components. One is the House. So there, like we have Lok Sabha, etc. So here it is known as the House, and the other is the Senate. Senate is like the Rajya Sabha. Right. So House and the Senate. Now, in the case of US, the president of USA, who runs the government, who runs the executive, is from the Democratic Party. While the Congress, you can see the map, it is actually dominated by the Republicans. And Republicans have certain problems with the way the Democrats are running the government. So they are saying, if you don't address these issues, we will not provide you funding. So the legislation which will provide for funding will not be passed. So there will be a problem. Okay. So Iran has launched a imaging satellite. Imaging satellites are also known as remote sensing satellites. Remote sensing. And the name of the satellite is Noor 3. Okay. US is yet to confirm it has actually launched, but it may have, yes, so it may have been launched. Orbiting 450, orbit is 450 kilometers above Earth's surface. Okay. Early in the morning, I shared some image with you. This one, right? Okay. So let's cover this. Humans carry DNA from extinct cousins like Neanderthals. Please note, like means it has Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens sapiens, we are Homo sapiens sapiens, referred to as humans. We carry the DNA from our extinct cousins like Neanderthals. Neanderthals were in the European side, and to the eastern side we had Denisovans, and there were many other groups of this. Only the Homo sapiens survived, and Homo sapiens evolved to become Homo sapiens sapiens. Homo sapiens literally means the intelligent human being. Okay, fine. So we have DNA from that. How do we know this? I mean, how do we know what was the DNA of Neanderthals like? So this thing, Neanderthals DNA, its genome was first pieced together by Svante Pabo. Svante Pabo. So he did this work. For this, he got the Nobel Prize also. So he's a Nobel Prize winner. Now let us understand this aspect also. Okay. So it is believed that the ancestors of Homo sapiens, so first it was Homo erectus, the upright human being. So then there were other branches of, it evolved into other branches of the human beings. So about 500,000 years ago, Denisovans migrated to the east, while there was a migration towards the west, towards the European side from East Africa. So this branch came to be known as Neanderthals. Right. So Neanderthals. Now it was believed that eventually later on Homo sapiens also came out of this region, and they got into conflict with the other groups like Neanderthals, Denisovans, and only Homo sapiens survived. So we see, historically speaking, from history point of view, we see that Homo sapiens and Denisovans, Neanderthals were rivals. There were tensions. But in the recent times, we have come to know that Homo sapiens interbred. They had relationships, intimate relationships with other groupings as well. And as a result, the modern human being has a part of the DNA from other ancestors, hominin ancestors. Hominin, basically, this term basically depicts primitive human beings. So the ones preceding the Homo sapiens may be referred to as hominins. So Neanderthals, Denisovans, etc. are basically hominins. And now we come to the front page. National Museum in New Delhi is to be replaced, and the new museum will be known as Yugin Bharat. It will be under the command of Ministry of Culture. Next, this particular article, this is about the interview which the Indian Express conducted with the NK Singh and the other co-convener on the expert group on multilateral development banks. So here, Larry Summers, his name is Larry Summers, NK Singh and Larry Summers. So Larry Summers made this remark: self-reliance can become excuse for protectionism. I was thinking that we should prepare this from mains point of view. So why not see it in India's context, right? Self-reliance, like Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are focusing on that. So this can become excuse for protectionism. Every country wants to be self-reliant. It doesn't want to, it wants to create jobs. It wants to create a foreign currency, foreign exchange. It wants to earn more money. But when they are doing that, in that process, they move towards protectionism, measures that will protect their economy. Okay. So, yeah, so protectionism, like in India's case, we can see recent times for laptop manufacturing. So we said that from now on, laptops that would be imported, we need licensing requirement. Only a select people who have license can actually import it. Then we always hear about taxes like custom duty. Custom duty on imports from USA have been increased, or let's say for protecting solar manufacturing, so solar cell manufacturing. So we want self-reliance in that. So to protect our, to protect the domestic manufacturers, to promote the industry in India, we are increasing the taxation. So custom duties from things that are coming from abroad, like China, USA, etc. And for that matter, we actually had a dispute with the US in the WTO. Right. So licensing requirement, taxes. Sometimes we can also say quantitative restrictions as well as qualitative restriction. We may say that this particular item does not meet the quality parameters, or particular thing that is made is not from trusted sources. So those are qualitative. Well, quantitative is taxation, like increasing tax, etc. And other thing could be that only so much amount will be allowed to be imported. So that is again part of quantitative restriction. So we can see that with focus on Atmanirbharta, we are moving towards protectionism as well. Now, what measures have the government taken? Broadly, I'm saying for self-reliance. So basically, it is fiscal incentives. For example, giving subsidies, or giving tax incentives, tax holidays for companies to come up and establish their manufacturing within India, or making low cost, giving them low cost advantage. So most recent example is production linked incentive scheme. Then we can always talk about regulatory reforms. So easing regulatory norms. This could be in terms of ease of doing business. We are focusing on ease of doing business. We are focusing on improving the logistics sector. So regulatory requirements for logistics. The e-way bill was introduced. GST is there. Labor codes, codification of labor laws. So simplifying labor laws basically, so that compliance is easier. Then we want the currency to be competitive. We want the rupee to depreciate slightly, so that so we have that currency advantage as compared to dollar or any other currency. In fact, Japan is a developed country, but their value of their yen, their currency is half of that of rupee. So why is that so? Because they want currency competitiveness. Okay. And lastly, it should be diplomacy. For example, India wants to be the most favored nation in terms of trade. So, or India wants to be part of the regional comprehensive economic partnership. So, where India gets preferable treatment in matters of trade. So, diplomacy. Right. So, these I have summed it up: fiscal incentives, regulatory reforms, currency competitiveness, and diplomacy. So, these are the measures that any government will take to promote manufacturing within its country, or say having self-reliance. And talking about self-reliance again, manufacturing, as I said, 17%, approximately 17% of the GDP comes from manufacturing sector. We want this to move towards 25%. And why manufacturing sector? One of the reasons is that it is job intensive. So we want job-led growth. Okay. Gujarat turns over new leaf, bans invasive tree species because of adverse impacts. And okay, fine. So I shared one article with you. I want you to analyze this. Okay, I can't find it, but I have shared it on the Telegram. So it's basically about invasive species. What are the concerns associated with it? So you can prepare a short note on the same as an answer writing format. It was by the Wire news agency. Okay. Now this tree species that we are referring to, this is known as Conocarpus trees. It is along the Sabarmati riverfront. This is a kind of mangrove. It's a kind of mangrove species. Right. So this is an invasive species. Now where is this from originally? Where is it indigenous from? So it's not really mentioned on the net. All it says that it belongs to the tropical geography. Of course, being a mangrove, it has to be from the tropical geography. What are the adverse effects? It is causing diseases like cold, cough, asthma. roots of these plants go deep inside the soil and develop extensively. And in that process, one may say that it is reducing the fresh water, the fresh water that is available. And secondly, it is crowding out non-concarpous trees. So indigenous ones are being left aside because they are more they're more advantaged, they are more competitive, so they are surviving at the cost of the indigenous species. Okay. Conocarpus. Maybe it can be asked in prelims also. Next. Nation remembers the great revolutionary freedom fighter on his birth anniversary. Shaheed Bhagat Singh. Shaheed Yadav Bhagat Singh. Okay. Now, from mains perspective, of course, a short note on the contributions of Shaheed Bhagat Singh. So that could be there. And secondly, Shaheed Bhagat Singh, if you look at the modern history syllabus, many books don't mention this, but he comes from the second phase of revolutionary freedom movement in India. Second phase. So there are two phases, first phase and second phase. So he comes from the second phase. So second phase is basically revolutionary freedom fighters. Revolutionary freedom fighters basically had the philosophy of gun and bombs, making the deaf hear, right? So those things were there. Assassination of important functionaries, officials of the British. So that was there. But the key point here was the second phase had an ideology. They had more of a vision as to what they wanted beyond this. Like he wanted Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. He formed this. So socialist term is being used that we want a future which where everybody has equality is there, right? Welfare is being focused upon. So that vision was there, visible, perceptible, as compared to the previous phase of revolutionary freedom fighters. This was second phase was more organized. It's waiting, it's just about to come in the GS1 paper. Editorial, advertisement by the Chinese Communist Party. Okay. So China is saying development, security, civilization, 3 global initiatives building a community with shared. So yesterday we discussed this. So today it is there. And I told you one mistake is there in that yesterday's article. Okay. So one is Global Development Initiative. This is basically a sister of the Belt and Road Initiative. So the infrastructure project that China is making along that, a lot of other infrastructure, industrialization, energy creation, all those things would be there. So all of this should be done in lines with the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. That's the basic thing. Second is security. So Global Security Initiative. It says global, but it's basically China-led initiative. So Global Security Initiative is premised on having an Asian security architecture led by China, Asian security architecture. The doctrine of indivisible security, that is an attack on one will be seen as an attack on the entire community. So China wants to have a lead on this, and this is seen as a counter to the Quad grouping that is developed by the US primarily. Last is Global Civilization Initiative. It basically means non-interference. Like USA says that your government is engaging in human right violation and all those things. So Global Civilization Initiative is premised on non-interference in other countries' affairs. Now the critics say that this is basically allowing governments to do wrongful conduct without being held accountable. For example, the Chinese are seen to be engaging in wrongful conduct with reference to the Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province, the Western China. Or China has been criticized for revocation of democracy in Hong Kong. So like that. So, and the reason why China is doing it, one, it wants to defend itself. Plus, there are other regimes like Iran, Saudi Arabia, right? So those may be attracted to this philosophy. Next, innovation-driven development, green power. Okay. Now, what we can do is we can see, okay, fine, innovation driven development. This is, of course, very much required. Where is India on that front? What is India doing? Likewise for renewable energy. Yesterday only we did 40 gigawatt of will be renewable energy will come by 2024. That is the expected target date. Okay, now we come to the farmer issue. So there are two articles. One is about issues farmers faced at the mandi, and other is with reference to the crop insurance scheme. And you can see with the sugar mill also there is a issue. Okay. So basically at this time, October, November, the Kharif season ends, paddy cultivation. So the farmer planted paddy. Now the farmer has to sell it. So he is going to the mandi. Mandi basically means market. So when the farmer reach mandis, especially with recommended short duration paddy. So the farmers are told that you cultivate the short duration paddy. It could be because of, we know it has been recommended for stubble burning, so reduce that. But this time it was because of the monsoons which affected the monsoons that took place at the start of the season, which destroyed the crops. So short duration paddy. So when they come to the mandi with the short duration paddy, the mandi nobody buys it. So they have to return with the crops. Now ideally it could be that they come to the mandi. So even if there's just nobody buying it, this could have been stored or could have been put in the warehouse. But there is limited capability for this also. So warehousing. So this is one of the issues. So the farmer had no choice but to return with the crop, and also the tension and the stress that comes with it. Now the farmer has traveled a long distance, 12 kilometers, 13 kilometers, hired a tractor and everything. And he has to go back. That is also a cost that is imposed on the farmer. Right, so you see some issues now. From here we can infer. So issues with the mandi, poor infrastructure, poor logistical infrastructure, poor crop management practices, and non-procurement. Now, if short duration paddy, at least the Food Corporation of India, so government entity, should have been buying it, right? That is the idea of the minimum security price, minimum support price. Okay. Next, so no place to sow produce. Private buyers are paying way less than the MSP. So private buyers are buying way less than the MSPs. So if the private players are buying at a price much lesser than the MSP, then ideally the farmer should have an option that they can sell it to the Food Corporation of India or any government agency. Right. But since they are not in a position to buy, or they are not buying, so they have no option but to sell it to the private players at a much, much lower price. So you see, we have MSPs, but the government needs to have the capacity to buy at the same time. Otherwise, MSPs are meaningless. MSP is to protect the prices, but even if you have declared MSP, but if there is no procurement from the government itself, then that MSP is meaningless. So if the government bought it at the MSP rate, then the private player would be forced to buy things at MSP. Right. So these are the basic issues that we can identify. And this is a very, very important theme from mains point of view, GS3. Next, crop insurance. Haryana farmers wage pitched battle against crop insurance firms. Okay. So crop insurance, I hope you understand. Farmers cultivate crops. For any reason, the crops are damaged. So in that case, the insurance companies will compensate them. Around 2016 mains, a question was asked about Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So very well drafted scheme with almost all certainties in case in which damage could have taken place were covered under the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Now this Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana was to be implemented by private companies mainly, and they were to, the farmers were compulsorily required to give premiums to these private companies, and in case of a disaster, private companies will pay insurance amounts. But what we have seen is in years when there are actually natural calamities, in those years, the payouts are not up to the mark. There are certain issues. And this is happening for some time now. So the scheme is very well designed. Almost all contingencies are covered, but still there are issues. So the issues, some of them taken from here are mentioned. Delays in assessment. The damage has taken place, right? The damage has taken place. So somebody from the state government and insurance agency should make an assessment and provide for the payment to be made. So, but we see a lot of delays in assessment. At this point is not mentioned in this article. And one of the ways of assessment is crop cutting experiment. So there are issues with crop cutting experiment. There are delays that take place which affects the farmers. Next is delay in release of payment. Let's say assessment is also done. The insurance says, okay, fine, so much amount has to be paid. But then there is delay in release of pending insurance claims. So money coming from insurance, there is delay that is taking place. So mind you, the farmer has to make investment for the next cycle. So after Kharif, for the Rabi, he needs that money. So even if the crop is damaged, the money should come in the timely manner. But that doesn't happen. So this makes the farmers all the more vulnerable. Next, in certain cases, we see malpractices. For example, in this year's, it is alleged that a private company reverted the insurance premium. So the farmers are required to pay a premium to the insurance company. An insurance company realized, okay, this season is not good. So rather than paying insurance in full, they said that, see, we will return back the premium. We return the premium, we have no obligation to pay you insurance amount. Because of some information, common sense, they know that this year there will be a problem. So they will have to make too much compensation, so they just revert back the premium amount. So this is a malpractice that is taking place. Fine, so you have about three points: delays in assessment, delays in release of funds, and malpractices like reverting premium to avoid payment of insurance. And you can add one more point: unfair denial of claims, right? So that can also be added. So you have 4 points. That is good enough. Okay. Next is with reference to the AIADMK. So this party, ADMK, it is written over here, but it's AIADMK. So this is the part, the South has two Dravidian parties, DMK and AIADMK. So DMK is run by Stalin, whose father Karunanidhi was there, while this was led by Jayalalitha. And both have their roots under the former leader Annadurai, so his branch. And Annadurai belonged to the Justice Party. Okay, so this tells us about the issue, BJP and AIADMK. We are not very interested with this. What we are interested is with modern history GS1. We are interested with the following terms: Justice Party. Justice Party, who created this? This was asked in the prelims. This thing, members' names were asked, and very specific question was there. Then E.V. Ramaswamy, who eventually headed the Justice Party. He started the Dravidian movement, which is also known as the self-respect movement. Right, E.V. Ramaswamy, and E.V. Ramaswamy was affectionately called as Perrier. So these things have to be covered. Yeah, this article I shared on invasive species with you. Okay. So it's the self-respect movement. It's available easily on the internet, right? So you have to study this. This is the Justice Party. Justice Party was, it is during the pre-independence era, around 1916. So before the Montague-Chelmsford reforms. So Justice Party was officially known as South Indian Liberal Front. It was founded not by E.V. Ramaswamy. This is a very important thing. It was not founded by E.V. Ramaswamy, who was known as the Perrier. It was founded in Madras by Natesh Mudaliar, T.M. Nair, right, Thyagaraja Chetty, and Thyara Mal. So these names are very, very important. These days, UPSC prelims, very specific things are asked. So you have to be very mindful now with the names. E.V. Ramaswamy later headed this organization. And the Justice Party, what was their agenda? It was an anti-Brahmin organization. It was against the issue of, it's basically against the issue of caste, right? So the caste issue, it said that the Brahmins had come from the out from the north. This is ideas come from the north. It has affected the indigenous population adversely. They have been subjugated under the garb of casteism. It was against the practice of the domination of the priestly class. So in that sense, I'm saying it was against the Brahminical system. Okay, disproportionate representation of Brahmins in the government jobs. So this eventually led to the start of the Dravidian movement. Please read about E.V. Ramaswamy. Yes. So he's E.V. Ramaswamy Perrier. He was the one who started the self-respect movement, or Dravidar Kaskam. He's also known as the father of Dravidian movement. He sided with the Mahatma Gandhi during the Vaikom Satyagraha. Okay. By the way, Justice Party in general were against, they were not in line with the Congress in general, because they felt that Congress is soft on the issue of caste. That Ambedkar also felt. He gave this slogan: no God, no religion, no Gandhi, no Congress, no Brahmins. Okay, so I want you to read this. I want you to have short notes on this. It's very, very important subject. Again, as NDA churn, BJP first had allies in the, it's a typical thing was that at the center will be the BJP. Then they had alliances with the regional partners like Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, Punjab, Shiromani Akali Dal, etc. Now, in the recent times, what we are seeing is that the regional partners, their prevalence is going down, their friendship is going down, and BJP is becoming more forceful in the regional area also. It is no longer dependent on their friends. So earlier, the friends had a greater say in the regional politics, while at the national level, it is the BJP. Now, BJP wants both. Okay, so that is the trend that is emerging. That is what this article is basically saying. G22 UN. Okay, so recently, Mr. Jaishankar, the foreign minister, he made a speech in the United Nations General Assembly, where he called upon on the hypocrisy of the rule makers. So he referred to the G7 as the rule makers, that you have, you are cherry picking when it comes to the issue of terrorism. Your policy is terrorism. Then you're not representing the global south in global governance. So all that, he made this remark. Now, what I have done is, as I told earlier, that this speech is more about not what he's saying, it's more about we getting to know about India's foreign policy stance. So this I have summed up over here. So in the recent times, we see India's foreign policy as a whole, I'm saying. As a whole, we are saying it is firm, it is based out of realism or pragmatism. Idealism, while during the Congress time, it was more of idealism, ideals being promoted, but here it is on pragmatism. India's core interest should be on the forefront. Now we can take examples of India's dealings with the China, the US, Canada, dealing with the issue of climate change. So there we can see. So you see, when we take up the first point on China, so we are now much more bold in defending our interest vis-a-vis China, be it in terms of the border, be it in terms of economic interest. So we have taken hard stance. For example, licensing requirement for buying laptops and PCs. It has to be from trusted sources. Even now, we have not named China. Then so in any case, we still a firm resolve can be seen even in the border issues. Firm resolve is seen. Our alliance with the Quad grouping, etc. So that is again there. Then coming to the USA, India-US relationship, even though our relationship is getting cozy with the US says that you don't buy things from Russia, you don't buy the weapon S-400 missile from Russia. India says, no, we will buy it. We will continue our relationship with Russia. Russia is an important partner. So it is based out of realism. It realizes, yes, we are friends with US, but we need friendship with Russia as well. And when the Ukraine war took place and USA said that we will impose sanction on any country, which is by having economic relations with Russia, India defended its interest and bought crude from there at discounted price. So realism, pragmatism can be seen. Likewise, the recent dealing with Canada, that Canada is soft towards the Khalistani issue. So, firm steps have been taken in that regard. Then, issue of the climate change also, the firm resolve on the historical responsibilities with reference to climate change. So, holding the people accountable, countries accountable. So, that is also there. So, we see firm realism and pragmatism in diplomacy. Second is the emphasis on the global south, the developing countries or the less developed countries. So India wants to be the voice of the global south. We always said this, but this time it is much more. And G20, we're vocal about it. And G20, we made a case for inclusion of the African Union. So entire continent got a voice in the G20 summit through the AU. Then what else? Now some additional points. Our country has non-alignment policy, that we are not aligned to either US, Russia. Now we are moving towards, we see in a foreign policy, strategic non-alignment. That is, we are non-aligned, but as it is convenient to us, right? So it is strategic as we require. For example, with reference to the US-Russia relationship, we are not aligned to any of these countries, but at the same time, when it is required, we can align with any of them. Right? We are aligned with US on the issue of terrorism or some technology we need, defense. At the same time, we have relationship with Russia or at the same time. So it's strategic non-alignment. So this is again based out of the philosophy of realism or pragmatism. Then our foreign policy, since it's centered around neighborhood first policy, that has always been the stance. So neighborhood first policy. This has now extended to extended neighborhood policy. So now we're seeing more emphasis on the extended neighborhood as well. Now, neighborhood first policy, you can see that India prioritizing providing help to Sri Lanka. Right? So in that regard, also you can give a reference in the recent times. Okay, giving emphasis to right. I think BIMSTEC. So that can also be there. Okay, now extended neighborhood. Extended neighborhood means countries, the neighbors of our neighbors. That is extended neighborhoods. So we see relations with the Central Asia region, the relations with the West Asia regions, Saudi Arabia, UAE, India becoming part of the I2U2 grouping. Right. India again prioritizing. PIMSTEC also has the extended neighborhood in the diplomacy of the Indian Ocean region concerning the East Africa, the Asian region, the South China Sea region. So extended neighborhood has gotten renewed impetus. Lastly, which is not mentioned, our diplomacy is now based on preemptive diplomacy or offensive diplomacy. Right, so strong statements are made, suddenness is there, and person who was to make allegation is on the defensive. So for example, you can read the remarks over here. So that voice of the developing countries, global governance of the rule makers, cherry picking their own rules for their own convenience, let's say on terrorism. So those are offensive, or we can say preemptive diplomacy. Before anybody could respond, you take action already. Okay, so this is there. Now one more thing, last thing. You see this in green. He made a remark previously also in G20, Mr. Jaishankar. He said, East-West polarization is so sharp in the contemporary world and North-South divide so deep. Diplomacy and dialogue are the only effective solutions. North-South divide, we understand. Developing countries, the less developed countries, global South, we keep talking about it. So that is deep. What is East-West polarization? So East-West polarization was associated with the Cold War era, where we saw the West Europe, which was aligned to the, which was under the ambit of the US bloc, and the East Europe, which was under the ambit of the USSR. So that was there. But in the present context, I could not really find that in the present context, but it could be with reference to China maybe. I could not find. I used that AI thing also, but it could be with reference to the Eastern civilization, Western civilization. Maybe in that context we can look at it. I can't find it now. Next article, the employment puzzle. Okay, there are two parts to this. So one is, unless job creation picks up, there is risk of country turning old before it becomes rich. So this is about demographic dividend. That is the focus. The second part is this article. Yes, this headline over here is not really connected with what is mentioned over here. So this one is about the State of Working India 2023 report. Right, so State of Working India 2023 report. So yesterday we covered it. Right, yesterday we discussed the issues concerning over here. So let me first cover the demographic dividend point, right? The first one. So unless job creation picks up, okay. So you see in our country, we have a demographic dividend. That is, in the working age group of 15 to 59 years, most of our population lies in this age group. So 62.5% is in 15 to 59 years age group. This you may attribute to this fact, United Nations Population Fund. Okay, and the mean age of India at the moment is 27 years. So we have a youthful population in the working age population. So obviously more people working, less people dependent, good for the country. However, this population, of course, in next 15-20 years, they will become aged and they will not get replaced because the fertility rate is falling. So we will have a bulging elderly population and less youthful population. That is going to be the future. So by 2036, according to the UN Population Fund, 60%, 15% of our population will be 60 plus, and this will actually increase by 2040s and 2050s. So this is not a good sign. And this also has to be managed well, and that too in quickly. So what can be done? So we need to increase high quality employment generation. Right. We normally speak about job creation has to be done, job creation, but jobs are everywhere. It's actually high quality job creation or formal employment. So that should be the main point. So non-farm employment outside of the farm, that has to be there, or we can say formal sector employment. So that should be done, because that actually improves the quality of life as well. Okay, here you can always refer to the national manufacturing policy. 17% of population is now, so 17% share is there. So 25% share should come from manufacturing sector. We want job-led growth, so inclusive growth. Next is skilling. Obviously, the labor should be skilled. So one is you should have jobs, but at the same time, you should have skilled labor to get the job. Now, it's believed that 20%, 29% of the labor is skilled, but that's not the important point. Is that less than 5% of India's population is formally skilled. Right? When you go to the job market, you say, I'm an engineer, I'm a graduate, right? So that is formally skilled. So less than 5% is formally skilled. And how many of them are actually job ready? That is also a issue. Then we need more investments. We need to identify sectors which are job intensive, for example, textile, leather, etc. We need to have infrastructure. We need to create a proper supply chain infrastructure, which makes the country attractive for investments and economic activity coming. Okay, so that's the main thing that needs to be done. So you have the important facts. This you can keep in mind, and these are the steps that needs to be taken. You can always add ease of doing business ranking, improving logistics performance. So that is always there. Okay. This I shared with you. Why don't you refer from the Telegram itself? The important points I've highlighted in different colors. That should help you. The green one is the main headings, and yellow is the explanation. Because we're running short of time actually now. Next is on ASEAN's plate. ASEAN is in the Indo-Pacific region. There are 10 island archipelago, 10 island countries, also referred to as the archipelago, right? So this ASEAN, the summit that took place, the presidency is with Indonesia. 8 countries attended, 2 did not. These 2 are Myanmar, because it is under the Junta government, military dictatorship is there, and the next one is Thailand. Okay, now ASEAN has initiated Asia-India Pacific Forum, which includes the Asian nations, the 10 Asian nations plus partner countries. These are things important for your prelims: US, UK, Canada, Australia, India. China is not there. Now this also indicates the priorities of ASEAN. Okay, so China is absent from here. So this thing is there. Okay. So this wants cooperation. ASEAN wants cooperation with these countries. Plus, ASEAN is troubled by the China's claim of the 9-dash line of the South China Sea region. But it is also concerned that this Asian region should not be a point of a proxy war between USA and China. So it has, in its declarations, repeatedly it mentions the phrase peace and prosperity in the region. It is basically a pointer which says that we do not want the presence of the US at the same time China on this region. So we want peace and prosperity and not a place of proxy war. It's a diplomatic way of saying it. Next is the mention of the 5-point consensus. Now, what is this 5-point consensus? 5-point consensus is basically with respect to Manipur, Myanmar. Right, so how the political crisis in Myanmar could be dealt with. So why don't you pause and zoom and read for yourself? This is how democracy, how things can be normalized in the Myanmar country. Okay, so from this article, we have discussed ASEAN, their priorities. We have discussed about the peace and prosperity 5-point consensus, Indo-Pacific, they're focusing on Indo-Pacific, and AIPF, Asia Indo-Pacific Forum, Asian Indo-Pacific Forum. Next article, numbers that matter and don't matter. Okay. In the recent times, there is, in the various economists, this is what the author is saying, that various economists are arguing about the way GDP is calculated. And the 8% growth is good. Some are saying 8% GDP is anemic. It is not good enough for the country. So all that thing is being talked about. Now here the author is saying that when everybody is talking about the GDP growth numbers, and when the government is chest thumping that their GDP figures are very, very good at a time when other countries are suffering, he says we should look at the people who are pleading for work in the MG Narega. So MG Narega is for unskilled labor work, right? Unskilled manual labor work. So this is an indication of the stress in the economy, particularly the rural stress. So nearly 20 million families have pleaded that they want work. So this means that total tally of people applying for Narega is around 70 million. So this is a very sizable population, and this is indicative of stress in the economy. So even when we say 8% GDP, 7% GDP, right? So this GDP is not reflective of the crisis the country is in. So the problem. So here he's only making a case with the scheme of Narega, that more enrollments are coming into the Narega. So he's saying the GDP, whatever you keep arguing, but there are a significant section of the population which is affected. And mind you, I'm saying 20 million families. So multiply this by 4, 5, 6, whichever number. So this is a sizable number. Right. So that's the basic thing. So if we want, so he's making an appeal to the policymakers that we should not really focus on GDP, or for that matter, even per capita income. We should have better indicators like how much jobs are created. What is the status on job creation, total number of jobs created? The labor market information, what is the stress that is there in the economy? So those are the priority areas for the government. Inflation indicators, those should be focused rather than merely focusing on the GDP growth numbers. So how the GDP is affecting the life, improving, or making the life of the people better. Next, China ambassador still not in, so MEA joint secretary. Okay. Since this the Galwan issue that took place, Galwan and that COVID issue simultaneously. So we haven't had an full-time ambassador of China in India, right? So full-time ambassador of China to India is not there since 11 months. Now recently, Chinese embassy is there in India, but full ambassador is not there. Now China has their National Day. And that's why we had that editorial also. So India normally sends their person of the rank of a cabinet minister to this as their representative when the China National Day is celebrated in India. So they sent a middle level officer to the embassy for the event. It's finally coming to an end. Okay, we have an explainer also. Fine. RBI likely to keep repo rate unchanged in October meet. Okay. So, yeah. So repo rate is obviously, if the repo rate is increased, the cost of credit increases. So when this is done to reduce the supply of money and curb demand, so in that process, inflation would be affected. So despite the inflation being at 6.5%, the repo rate is being unchanged. So they are not hiking the repo rate. That is the main thing. At the same time, because the inflation is high, the repo rate will not come down as well. So that is what is expected in the October meet. Next, we come to the explainer section. So MP's code of conduct still undecided. Okay. So member of parliament, so they should have their own code of conduct. So that is not yet defined. Latest we have 2014 when an effort was made when LK Advani was heading the Committee on Ethics. So he made a proposal, but that didn't come through. Okay. Now the code of conduct in this article is basically talking about MPs conduct, and that MPs should declare that conflict of interest. So basically it's talking about conflict of interest. So that is there. Plus MPs for their action should not expect any remuneration, expect or accept any remuneration, private interest. So that is there. So these two things are mentioned. There are actually 14-point code of conduct for members. And there should be a register which maintains interest in a form that is decided by the ethics committee. Okay, in case of a dispute which arises in the absence of the code of conduct, then there is this ethics committee in both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, which looks into the issue if the parliamentarian has engaged in wrongful conduct or unethical conduct. Right. Next is cancer's gender problem. So yesterday we had an article concerning the same. So the same has been explained. So it's based on the report of Lancet, and it has come to light that women, many of their cancer-related deaths could have been avoided. So 6.9 million cancer deaths were preventable, and 4.03 were treatable. Now, why did this not happen? That is the main issue. So one thing is, what could have avoided was screening and timely diagnosis. But for this to happen, the patient has to come that, see, we have a problem regarding this, right? So there is absence of knowledge, decision making, financial power amongst the women. So that is the issue. So women are more likely than men to lack the knowledge and power. So one is that they are not aware that there may be an underlying condition. So that is one thing. Plus, in the house, women have an inferior position in a patriarchal society. So the health of the women are compromised in that respect, and they do not have decision-making power. And there was a case study also that was referred to. Further, when we look at care report, the care economy or the care sector. So women are underrepresented as leaders. So leaders make policy making. Leaders play the lead role of sensitizing. Right. So women are underrepresented as leaders in the care economy or the caregiving sector. So that is again a problem. The healthcare seeking behavior is absent in a lot of women. So there is a gender perspective, or we can say that there is a gender gap in the healthcare. Now, what can be done is we can create awareness especially amongst the women as leaders in the care economy, plus vaccines like HPV that causes cervical cancer. So these should be made accessible. Plus, we want more doctors, care facilities at the primary healthcare sector, and sensitization towards the issue of cancer.